So Tna Impact was a tape show in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the show begins with Aces and Eights coming to the ring. Bully Ray gets on the mic and says that Chris Sabin is the first order of business that needs to be handled. He says that Sabin has the opportunity to exchange the X Division Championship for a world title shot against him at Destination X, and that Hogan will ask him for the title later in the show. Bully Ray once again warns Sabin not to give up the belt because he is a bad man who does bad things. And Bully Ray then says that Aces and Eights will vote in a new vice president and acknowledges the challenge made by the Main Event Mafia last week. Bully Ray says no to that challenge. And as he is saying that Aces and Eights fights when they want to, the Main Event Mafia music plays and they come out. Kurt Angle gets on the mic and tells Bully Ray that the challenge was a warning and that next week the Main Event Mafia will take out each member of Aces and Eights one at a time, so that when Bully Ray defends the world title, there will be no one there to help him. Then Sting gets on the mic and tells Bully Ray that he's nervous because of his pacing. And then Sting says that the newest member of Main Event Mafia is a heavy hitter, and that Bully Ray will know who it is later. And then Main Event Mafia leaves. Okay, decent opening segment that was hindered by the what chants during Bully Ray's promo. I don't know why people continue to chant this word when they don't know why they're doing it. They just say it to hear themselves say it. That is a word that does not belong in this company. So after we see Chris Sabin walking backstage, we see Jeremy Borash and Christy Hemme standing beside a raffle drum in preparation for the start of the Joker's Wild tournament. The Joker's Wild tournament will take the 12 Bound for Glory series participants and pair them to form 6 tag teams according to the names that are drawn from the raffle drum. And these 6 teams will compete in 3 separate tag team matches. And then the 6 wrestlers on the winning tag teams from these 3 matches will face each other in a gauntlet match in the main event. And the winner will receive 25 points in the Bound for Glory series. So then Jeremy Borash and Christy Hemme draw the names for the first match. Jeff Hardy and dumbass Joseph Park versus AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. It was an okay match. The match ends with Samoa Joe delivering the rear naked choke to dumbass Joseph Park. Now it's interesting that for tag teams that were formed randomly by way of names being drawn from a raffle drum, both teams in this match consist of wrestlers who faced each other in the ring recently. Jeff Hardy versus dumbass Joseph Park last week, and AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe 3 weeks ago. So then we see Jeremy Borash and Christy Hemme again, and they draw the next names for the second tag team match, and we get this: Jay Bradley and Hernandez versus Mr. Anderson and Magnus. Again, okay match. Magnus basically did all the work for his team because Mr. Anderson basically just refused to be a partner, even at one time preventing himself from being tagged into the ring. And the match ends with Magnus rolling up Hernandez for the pin after Bradley grabbed Hernandez's leg after Hernandez came off the ropes. And then after the match, Mr. Anderson, was acting as if he had contributed to the win. Naturally, Mr. Anderson decides not to help Magnus during the match because of the impending battle between Aces and Eights and the Main Event Mafia. Yet, how does a supposed random drawing of names just happen to pair up a member of Aces and Eights and a member of Main Event Mafia 1 week before? Also with this match, we had another tag team consisting of 2 wrestlers who faced each other in a match last week. Random. So we see Austin Aries and Robert Roode backstage, and Aries is complaining about the company conspiring against him, which resulted in his losing the X Division title. And he blames Roode for not helping him. And Roode basically says that he's more concerned about the fact that he doesn't have any points in the Bound for Glory series. And then Bad Influence comes in, and Christopher Daniels says that the 4 of them are the remaining wrestlers left in the Joker's Wild tournament, and that the way the random picks go, it'll be Bad Influence versus Roode and Aries. Translation: the partners for each team will be opposing each other. So then we see Jeremy Borash and Christy Hemme again make the final random picks for the last tag team match. And we get this: Austin Aries and Christopher Daniels versus Robert Roode and Kazarian. Good match. The match ends with Kazarian rolling up Daniels with an inside cradle. So with that, we had Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Magnus, Mr. Anderson, Robert Roode, and Kazarian move on to the gauntlet match, where the winner will see 25 points. Now let's go back to the pairing of these tag teams. Now, if these pairings had been presented without the raffle drum gimmick, then the perception would be that, for the most part, wrestlers who faced each other previously, or wrestlers who would have a natural rivalry, would purposely be teamed together, and it would be believable. But instead, TNA decides to present the raffle drum gimmick and make these tag team pairings appear as being random picks, which no one would believe. The failure of TNA logic once again. So then we have Aces and Eights backstage, ready to vote for their new VP. And Taz is with them. Bully Ray says that Aces and Eights got rid of one problem, namely D'Lo Brown, and now it's time to choose a vice president. Bully Ray acknowledges both Mr. Anderson and Doc as being the ones that can be vice president, and he says that he will leave the vote to the group. So he's basically excusing himself from the voting. And Mr. Anderson and Doc each vote for themselves, of course. Wes Briscoe votes for Anderson. Devon votes for Doc. Garrett Bischoff votes for Anderson. And Taz votes for Doc. So now the vote is 3-3, leaving Mike Knox with the deciding vote. And Knox and Doc clink their bottles together, and Doc is thinking that he has it. but Knox votes for Mr. Anderson. So Mr. Anderson is the new vice president. And Doc is pissed as he looks at Knox. And Knox tells him that it's about the club and not him. So just when I want Doc and Knox to become a tag team and go for the belts, this happens. It figures. So then we had the ladder match. Gail Kim versus Taryn Terrell. And the women's champion, Mickie James, comes out and takes a seat at ringside. And this was a very good match. And I think that it would have been great if it weren't for two things. First, we didn't see that one signature spot move that makes everyone go nuts. During the Slammiversary match, that moment was when Taryn Terrell executed that inverted bulldog to Gail off the ramp onto the floor. And in this match, it looked like we were going to see it. Gail Kim was laid out on top of the closed ladder, which was propped up on the rung of the upright ladder on one side and on the middle rope on the other side. And then Taryn Terrell went up to the top rope, and you could see the crowd standing in anticipation of Taryn coming off the top rope on top of Gail, on top of that closed ladder. But then Gail rolled off the top of that ladder and fell to the mat, and the crowd reacted with boos. That signature moment was missed there. Now the second thing is more of a production issue rather than an in-ring one. As highly anticipated as this match was, I felt that TNA should have found a way to show this match commercial free. They knew how much fans were looking forward to seeing it, and TNA even hyped the match themselves during the time leading up to it. And they could have done this. They could have found a company to sponsor the match. You know, at the beginning of the match or sometime during the start of the match, this ladder match is brought to you by, etc. And then maybe the company logo could have been placed somewhere on the screen. Now, yes, there is a danger to doing something like this, where the sponsor could demand that the company name be mentioned 20 times during the match, and something like that would become nauseating. But if a compromise could be found that satisfies both parties, then I could tolerate this match being a sponsored match rather than one interrupted by a commercial break. Now, the ending of this match has been crapped on a lot. Taryn Terrell has Gail Kim in a dragon sleeper by the ropes, and then Gail Kim takes Taryn Terrell's hair and ties it to the middle rope. And as Taryn struggles to break free, Gail goes up the ladder, grabs the number one contender's contract, and wins the match. Now, I thought that the ending was solid because it showed Gail's cerebral side, and that's something that we really don't see from her. Gail showed that despite how talented she is, she can take a cheap way out to gain the number one contendership that she was fighting for and embarrass Taryn Terrell at the same time. Now, if there had been nothing at stake, then a move like this would have made no sense to do. Now, what I also liked was that after Gail won the match, she never acknowledged Mickie James. She didn't look at her. She didn't say anything to her. She didn't point at her. She didn't do the belt around the waist gesture. When she left the ring, she went back up the ramp. She looked at Taryn Terrell, shoulder up a little bit, holding the contract up, and then she left. Now, yes, Mickie did watch Gail walk back up the ramp. And she even gave a little applause. And then she looked at the crowd and looked at her belt. But the point is, I like the fact that Mickie and Gail did not engage each other. And because they did not do that, it only initially builds what they're thinking about each other and how they feel about each other, leading up to the eventual match between the two. Now, I don't think that Mickie versus Gail should be happening at Destination X. I think it's too soon. I think that this needs to be built up some more. And I think that there is the possibility that we could see one more match from Gail and Taryn. I think they have it for one more. I mean, technically it's 1-1. Taryn wins the last woman standing match at Slammiversary. Gail wins this ladder match. So now they're obviously, you could squeeze out a third match and settle this. Because remember, with the limited number of women they have, between now and the eventual Bound for Glory match between Taryn Terrell and Mickie James, there's time that needs to be taken up doing something. And of course, that is one option to take. So then we see Sting and Kurt Angle sitting backstage. And they're talking about their fellow Main Event Mafia members, Magnus and Samoa Joe, being in the gauntlet match, going for the 25 points in the Bound for Glory series. And then Sting gets a phone call from the fifth member of Main Event Mafia, the so-called heavy hitter. So then we have the 6-man gauntlet match, where the winner receives 25 points in the Bound for Glory series. Now, actually, this match really wasn't the traditional gauntlet match. It was more of a gauntlet battle royal match, I guess. The match starts with AJ Styles and Magnus, and then 2 minutes pass, and then Kazarian comes to the ring. And then 2 more minutes pass, and Samoa Joe comes to the ring. Now, during this 2-minute period, Kazarian is eliminated, and then they go to a commercial break. So then we return from the commercial break, and we see Mr. Anderson in the ring, and then the countdown starts until the next wrestler comes. And that wrestler is Robert Roode. Now, during this 2-minute period, AJ Styles is eliminated by Mr. Anderson clotheslining him. Then Samoa Joe clotheslines Mr. Anderson over the top rope, but the momentum takes Joe over as well, and both are eliminated, leaving Roode and Magnus. And then Magnus wins with a reversal of a roll-up by Roode to get the 25 points. So now Magnus is far in front of everyone. It was an okay match. I think that TNA just needs to be more definitive as to what a gauntlet match is. If you think back to Genesis, the pay-per-view back in January, when the women had their gauntlet match, it was a traditional one-on-one, one-fall series of matches in which 2 wrestlers start out, and the winner of the fall would face the next wrestler that would come down, and then those two wrestlers go at it, and then the winner of that fall faces the next wrestler, and then that continues until the last wrestler comes down, and then the winner of that fall wins the match. This match did not do that. So I think that TNA should be more definitive in the future about what a gauntlet match is. So then Hogan comes out to the ring with his leopard bandana on. And Hogan does his typical city name drop shtick. Hogan mentions that Destination X is next week, and he asks Chris Sabin to come out. But Hogan refers to Sabin as, quote, my guest, unquote. Only Hogan. So Chris Sabin comes to the ring, and Sabin gets on the mic and says that after suffering the 2 ACL tears, he thought that, he would never wrestle again. Everyone told him not to. But he continued to pursue his dream, a dream that he has had since watching wrestling on TV as a kid. And of course, he puts over Hogan like he had a choice. So then Sabin officially makes the decision to pursue the world title. And he hands the X Division belt to Hogan, or maybe he somewhat falls short of handing the X Division belt, because for some reason the Aces and Eights music that started playing prevented Hogan from grabbing the belt. Bully Ray comes to the ring, and he tells Sabin not to hand the X Division title to Hogan. So it just makes you wonder, why did they even start the process of Sabin handing the belt to Hogan if the whole point of Bully Ray coming out was to say, Sabin, don't do it? He calls Sabin a little boy who will never beat him. And Sabin counters by telling Bully Ray that he pinned him in Team 3D's retirement match, and that he is the only wrestler to kick out of Team 3D's finisher. Sabin says that he has always been the underdog, and that a bigger man like Bully Ray would beat a smaller man like him normally. But Sabin says that all he needs is one chance. And he tells Bully Ray that he will beat him to become the world champion. And then Bully Ray tells Sabin not to hand the belt to Hogan, but Sabin does. And Bully Ray tells Sabin that he has signed his death warrant, and that when he fights Bully Ray, he will be fighting Aces and Eights as a group. And then the other members of Aces and Eights come out, and then there's this weird musical transition, because then all of a sudden Main Event Mafia's music plays, and then the Main Event Mafia come out, and Sting tells Bully Ray that he will be alone when he fights Sabin. And then Sting introduces the 5th member of Main Event Mafia, the so-called heavy hitter, Quentin Jackson. And the show ends. Good promo by Sabin. Unfortunately, Sabin was upstaged by the fact that an MMA fighter who has said recently that he is not going to be wrestling is forced into the group. Why is Quentin Jackson in the Main Event Mafia? Is it his intimidating howl? Is it his terrifying left eye muscle twitch? Is it that he will cause fear by wearing a suit? It has to be one of those reasons, right? It couldn't be because Spike TV told TNA to do it. No, it couldn't be that. I'm TazMart 2002, and that was my Tna Impact Analysis for July 11th, 2013. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions about TNA or wrestling in general that you'd like for me to answer, you can contact me on Twitter, TazMart2002. That's TazMark2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email. TazMart2002@gmail.com. I thought it was a solid show. And we look forward to Destination X next week. Now, there's been a lot of talk about TNA's financial difficulties recently. And there have been several wrestlers who have been released. And the production costs for the Impact tapings have become a concern now. But let's go back to the talent releases. Obviously, the wrestlers that were released were pretty much expendable. If TNA wasn't going to use them, there was no point in being there. So why is Hogan's daughter still there? I can only imagine the amount of money that she has pulled in the last year, yet she has done nothing. When is she going to get let go? Oh yes, that's right. Because Hogan won't allow it. Although Hogan says, I just work there. And speaking of Hogan, the so-called marketing face of TNA hasn't done anything to improve the company's mainstream standing. We're talking 3.5 years now. When is somebody going to have the balls to finally realize that and send him packing? No, it won't be as easy as we all think. It won't. Hogan has a lot of power in the company, and it won't be easy, but it has to be done. But Dixie, he said he just works there. If you want to gain a little bit more credibility, then fire his daughter. Fire Hogan's daughter. He's not going to do anything, at least that's what he says. Call his bluff. I'm Taskmar 2002. Gone.